My name is Alexandra Seddon, and my life has been an incredible collage from Imperial Russia right down to the present in the Bega Valley, where my entire focus is conservation. Would you like to show your little face, darling? So sweet. Community and education. In the Bega Valley, those things have taken up my whole life. Sometimes I do take too many risks, but if you don't jump over the cliff, you don't learn that you can fly.
The seeds that Alexandra sows grow and blossom into the most amazing projects.
Alexandra's efforts and the work she's done at the local level is an example for the world.
She's a true environmental warrior and the planet's crying out for help, and Alexandra's leading the charge down here and the rest of us have to follow in her footsteps.
How Alexandra has lived her life worldwide, it would be brilliant.
And she's a tremendous illustration of that famous Gandhi's saying, that you must be the change that you wish to see in the world.
My great-grandmother was Baroness Marie von Gravenitz, and her job was to be lady-in-waiting to Marie Dagmar, the mother of the Tsar, Nicholas. And she lived at Kostilitsi, which is near St. Petersburg. She inherited Kostilitsi from her father, Karl, and that was where she lived, and it was a castle. But it was a huge estate, very, very large. It had its own church, it had masses of farmlands and its own village, everything. My great-grandmother Marie had, I think it's 6 children, and my grandfather Peter had 2 daughters, and my mother was the eldest daughter. My mother was there till she was 4 years old, and she remembers 2 stuffed Russian bears either side of the entrance, and they were huge, and they each held a silver platter on which you could put your calling card if you called into Kostilitsi. My mother always told stories of Russia, and Russia was a magic fairy tale, another world. My grandmother and grandfather were living at Kostilitsi and went to Britain just before the revolution broke out, just before the Bolsheviks took Kostilitsi and killed everybody who was there. When she luckily escaped with her life from the revolution, she had all that luxury that she had had in Russia, and suddenly she had nothing when she came to Germany, and the whole family just embraced her, even though she and Georg had nothing. And this became a theme in her life. For me, she is this example of someone who has this experience of great luxury and also the experience of not having anything and being helped. And I have never been frightened of having nothing, because I've had nothing several times over, and always there have been people who have helped.
That's why she's so amazing, because her background comes from, well, not always affluence, but she's really worked it out for herself.
She's a great illustration of what makes Australia what it is in terms of that migrant experience and all those different, strands of culture and traumas and backgrounds and historical frameworks that the people of Australia have all brought to this land. So she's just a wonderful illustration of what makes Australia special.
I was born in London while bombs were falling, and I feel very much aware of the bombs falling when I was born. I don't know why, but it's a sort of blackness. We came to Australia when I was 2, and we lived first of all in Sydney, but very soon after that in Caulfield in Melbourne. And it was an incredibly strict upbringing. My father truly believed that he should discipline us because he had been in the army, and he felt that he was doing the best thing by bringing us up very strictly and educating us all the time. Music was totally forbidden in the house. My father could not bear any music in the house because that was noise. Pete and I were brought up in silence, and my sister, Camilla, and we all took to it in different ways. Camilla became a writer, Pete became completely silent, and I'm not quite sure what happened to me. I don't know, but I certainly always wanted community. My mother was, I think, incredibly soft inside, but very, very anxious that the surface should appear perfect. As my cousin Yuta, who's still alive, said, "Your mother was the most elegant person I have ever met. And look at you." But she was unbelievable. And I tried really, really hard to live up to her standards, but never managed. I did try to hug her sometimes, and as far as I got was her fur coat, which was made of beaver, poor little beavers. It was a beaver coat, but I did love hugging that. And I tried hugging my father sometimes when I hadn't seen him for a while, and he would just go like ramrod, like that. So that didn't happen at all. But the wonderful thing was that we were totally secure. We were very resourceful because we were never given any entertainment. We were just made to disappear. And my brother and I became very adept at entertaining ourselves, and I have never been bored in my life. I don't want to talk about the abuse when I was sent to stay with another family when I was 11, but it has influenced my whole life, the abuse from an older man. And he was an electrician. He was the son who was still living at home with a family where my parents used to put me. The abuse started when I was 11 and continued till I was about 16. When you're a child, you assume that everything is your fault, and also the man who abused me made me promise never to tell anyone, and so I didn't. And so that secret went on till I was about 20 or so, and so became, I thought I was dirty, basically. So many years later, after talking with lots of women, I realised that the choice was between remaining a victim or becoming powerful. I've had several dreams, but that I remember always, but I had a wonderful dream where I was in a 2-storey house and I was looking down, and there were so many trees and they were so close, and there was a mandala made out of drops of water that was trying to settle between the trees, and it just couldn't get all the way between the trees. There were always trees slightly in the way, and something said to me, "It doesn't matter, it's beautiful." Anyway, And then I looked up and there was a mandala made out of pieces of light, like prisms in the sky, and it wasn't complete, and there was some part of it which couldn't quite complete itself, and I had the same feeling then, it doesn't matter, because it's already beautiful. My parents didn't want me to go to university. My father enrolled me in a secretarial college and my mother enrolled me in a domestic science college. So I didn't want to do either of those things, so I went to work at Myers Chadstone for a year. So I worked at Myers for a year, and then I thought, no, I would really like to go to university. So I did, and my first year there I spent a lot of time with Nicholas Seddon. He used to know when I was coming into the library at university, because apparently I had a very noisy bracelet and it went tinkle tinkle whenever I came in. I didn't marry him for a long time because we didn't sort of think it was necessary, and then we're going off to Oxford. Well, both lots of parents were not happy that we went off without being married, so we did get married. So all my adult life I've worked in a variety of jobs to earn a living, in a spaghetti factory, in prisons, doing childcare and cleaning, and above all teaching in many different situations, including when Nicholas and I were in Papua New Guinea, where we earned the money to buy Cowsnest. Probably the idea of Cowsnest had all sorts of beginnings. Like when I first learned about kibbutzim, I thought, that's fantastic. They've got physical work during the day, they've got painting and music and everything in the evening, they have a communal thing for the children, and it just seemed wonderful. So Pete, my brother, really wanted to have his own land because he'd always worked on other people's land. So Pete wanted us to do it all together. So we did, all three of us together bought it. We came down in 1975, January, to look for land. And I looked at the mountains and Nicholas looked at the river and Pete looked at the pasture, and we all said yes. And for me, to have that amount of land means that it needs to be shared. My whole idea about Cowsnest was that people shouldn't need to have money to come and be on the land if they were willing to contribute their labour. And I always had been fascinated by the concept of to each according to his need, from each according to his ability, which was the basis of the kibbutzim as well as communism, and that was the original idea of Cowsnest as well. Cowsnest has always provided a refuge for a huge variety of people, whether they are criminals wanting to do a bit better, or people drying out from heroin, foster children and teenagers at risk, and a lot of students of agriculture from other countries.
Cowsnest is a really important place 30, 40 years ago when it was established. It was one of the first community farms.
Oh, wow, it's great, the machinery shed, yeah. Oh.
It brought a lot of people into the region.
Hi there, people in the preserving room. Hi there. Hi there.
I'm learnt building skills and cow milking skills and gardening and fencing.
Pressing the shit paper just made.
You could go and scrape the cream off the milk from the day before and go and pull strawberries from the garden, and you know, in some ways, sometimes I think we felt we lived like kings on this fantastic farm.
I had the feeling that if we just had 3 rules: clean up after yourself, put away tools and equipment, and take responsibility for any task you take on. That would mean that an ardent Christian or an atheist, gay person could all live together. And it did mean that, because those 3 rules are incredibly simple, but they imply respect for other humans. We didn't actually have to ask people to leave, because all we had to do was say, that rule, you're not keeping to that rule, you're not keeping to that rule, and sooner or later people would know whether they were suited to be there or not.
Hello, boys and girls! Oh, and some mums and dads too. Oh, you all look like country people, just like me.
It's crucial for our survival on the planet to do this community stuff. The human spirit, that's precious, and it is being undermined in many ways by the dominant paradigm in our society now.
Oh, well, you know, one of these days, you know, when you lay enough golden eggs, I'll treat you a little bit better. But in the meantime, I want you to go and think about how to make more golden eggs.
Community is a natural place for us to be, so that we get to feel that we belong, that people know us, and that we can contribute. And that's essential for the health of human spirit.
When I first came to Cowsnest, I lived in the only house there was up on the hill with my brother. Then when my brother acquired a girlfriend, I moved down to this house, which is the red house. And it had no water, no electricity, no bathroom, all the windows were broken, and the swallows lived inside, and I lived with the swallows, and I always loved this house. The red house has always been more or less at the centre of Cowsnest, and so new people, when they come, usually come to the red house. The red house is now a very comfortable place because it has a bathroom and it has water and electricity and a lot of conveniences that the rest of the dwellings on Cowsnest haven't got. So in fact this is quite a luxurious place to live now, especially with a piano on the veranda, gosh. And that's really nice. Nicholas and I were together for 15 years, and after we separated I continued living on Cowsnest and met in 1978 one of the 2 great loves of my life, Owen. And we lived on Cowsnest until he was killed. He used to ride a motorbike. He would do a wheel stand all the way up the drive, and you know, I just thought everybody who rode a motorbike did that. One time he was doing it out on the back paddock and he hit a bump and he was thrown forward and he had brain stem damage, and then after 3 weeks they decided, well, the doctor said to me if he does regain consciousness he's not going to recognise anyone. I was with him when he stopped breathing, and I don't know why, but I just kept on saying to him over and over, you've given me all this, you've given me all this. And I sort of understand it now, because he didn't like community. He didn't like the fact that other people were sharing the farm, and it couldn't really have happened with him, I don't think. But I don't know. But he gave me a lot more than that, because it was the most amazing thing to be with someone when they stop breathing. After Owen died, when I was at the hospital in Canberra, I was automatically introduced to a social worker who was supposed to help. And when I talked to her, I just said, there's so much pain in the world. And she said, no, there isn't. It's in you. And I said, no, it's not. It's in the world. And the second time I saw her, she realised she'd have to give up telling me it was in me, because I wasn't going to believe it. So she told me something really useful. She told me about Chiron. He was a centaur in ancient Greek mythology, and he was a healer. And he had a wound. I think Achilles had produced the wound, and the wound could not be cured. There was no way it could be healed. So what was required was for him to keep it at all absolutely spotless all the time. But the good thing was that it put him in touch with all the pain of other people. And so she told me that, and that has been really useful, because I thought the fact that I'm aware of that horror helps me with dealing with other people. I have all my life been aware of the horror underneath, and the horror underneath is something that I sink into very easily. If I don't go on doing something positive, something that does help, I will just sink into the horror and just stop and don't want to be alive. The fire of his gentleness burns her. She shivers in its black flickering. The fire is the lover of the tree. You can read their passion, red painted in coals. Red sleep prickles my eyelids with suns. Pull leaves in a blanket over. Cover these too. Grass growing up in the spaces between fingers, toes and hairs. Hairs and grass. A moth drawn to fire. And I'd always been writing poetry. I think my first poem was published while I was at Melbourne University, and then in Oxford I was publishing stuff in London magazines, and I used to go up to London and do readings in London, in Covent Garden, where all sorts of famous poets had read in a pub, upstairs in a pub. It was really nice.
It was a long way from the jetty into the water, and he caught himself halfway like those.
The people who were attracted to go and live in Cowsnest seemed to be people with a bit more of a sort of a creative bent. It is a time to explore ideas.
A light-proof negative, which etching will be done on afterwards, which will be like that, so that you can print through them.
Just sort of follow your interests in an environment that was supportive and nurturing. You know, establishing the Candlo Art Society and you know the fantastic place that Candlo is now in terms of the musicians and artists and creative hub that it continues to be, had its roots in Cowsnest being established.
there's not so much division between sleeping and waking and dreams that you have. I concluded that as you get older, you're able to live more and more in your right brain or your unconscious with colours and light and sounds and feeling and so on. And that I really enjoy so much. I mean, it's ridiculous sometimes when we're at Potoroo because you're making like 40 decisions in 2 minutes and chung, 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 and everybody's saying, wait, blah, 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 blah. But yet you get so that you can actually do that and at the same time be in that other state where you're just enjoying the colour and the sound and the feel. And I absolutely love that. And that sort of links up with the collage and that kind of thing.
I love her love of the arts. She's done some beautiful things, poetry and visual arts. She's an important creative voice in the valley here.
Why is it that I would want to write or paint or do collage? I have no idea. I just know that it's like eating and drinking. If I don't do it, I feel very strange and starved. And when I don't do it for a while, if I get going, I can't stop and I just go on and on and on and on and on. And it just comes out in great swathes of colour and stuff everywhere. No, I wasn't meant to have it. I understand what poets meant, like Keats, when they talked about the muse, because the muse just comes in and you just let go and you just go. This was preparing for burrows and nests. I was making monsters. That one's nice because that was one of the monsters that was big enough for a child to sleep inside. Two of us had a weaving exhibition there. And this one is an article and it was about me being a writer and a farmer. And that's me and that's Debbie, who's the sister of my partner who just died. In the Redfern Community Centre, I set up this enormous weaving that 20 people could work on all at once. This article here was in Women's Weekly. It was about the Bega Festival, and I did a pig knitted out of baling twine, and Ita Buttrose patted it when she opened the exhibition, and so I was very excited. This one is quite interesting because it's the applique that is in this room. That's when I was making the applique, this one, and two little kangaroos thought they would help me. So they took off all the underneath, all the buttressing of the tree in the middle. They ate it all while I was working on the top part. This is a picture from the opening of the exhibition that was called Burrows and Nests. This was a baling twine tree and there was a little nest there, and this was just a weaving with little nests. This was just a workshop where I think I was teaching basket making. Oh, this is quite a nice picture. This is quite a good one. Of working on a weaving. You can actually see the texture of the baling twine. This one did win an award, but I can't remember what. It was a hollow tree made out of baling twine and all the children could sort of go inside it. You know, you can say you get lost in a good book, and so I did a book that was big enough for people to walk into. One of the most exciting exhibitions recently was something that Rick Anderson from Bega Gallery organised. He asked a lot of us to come to Mogareka for 2 consecutive days and bring nothing. I was absolutely overjoyed because what it meant was I could spend the entire day just moving around bits of bark and leaves and doing wonderful things with them. Over all these years, there was one constant friendship of a man who later became the greatest love of my life, Nico. I came to the Bega Valley, to Candelo in 1975, and Nico came in
1976. We're not too sure exactly when we met, but I have this recollection of, in the early days, swimming in a swimming hole. She had nothing on and I had nothing on. Yes, I thought she was very attractive then. And yes, we've been very good friends ever since. There was quite a few of this sort of thing happening at that time. The heyday would have been the 70s up until to the 80s. And what has happened since then is the bureaucracies have made it very, very difficult for people to start up farms like what we tried to do.
And then it had a definite trough where capitalism came in to a big extent, and more people thought, oh, I've got my nice little house, I'm going to keep my nice little house. It's just like it would be in the suburbs, except I don't have to own it or own anything, and get the best of everything. And people get like that, it's a natural tendency.
Could somebody loan me some money? Does anyone have any ideas how I could make some money? Do you have an idea down there? Oh, I could sell Bessie. Now I could send her down to that nice place called Cowsnest, where all those rich hippies live.
Come on, cows. Come on, darlings. In you come. In you come. I was a farmer for 21 years all the time. Come on then. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Come on then. In we go. Come on, sweetie. And then I started to be a wildlife carer as well as a farmer in the last few years at Cowsnest, and set up feral animal proof 57-acre area, which could be a halfway house for injured and orphaned native animals. It became so intense, my care of native animals, that eating and sleeping were my luxuries. From dusk till dawn and further on from that, looking after native animals.
Look at that.
And even at Cowsnest I continued teaching as well as the farming. So I got a shock when my mother died and I inherited enough money not to have a job anymore. And I realised that I would have to take this responsibility seriously and think about the best possible way of using this gift of my inheritance. In 2006, someone said to me, Yellow Pinch Wildlife Park is for sale. All the animals are dying. We have to do something. And although I thought I have got plenty of things on my plate already, I thought, I can't say no because all the animals are dying. So I sell some of my mother's shares and I buy it. Then we formed a company which didn't have shares. It's called Company Limited by Guarantee, which is what a charity can be. And I gave Yellow Pinch Wildlife Park, which had become Potoroo Palace, to the company, and we got approval on the environmental register for tax deductibility status. So now it is a charity, it belongs to no one, it can't be bought or sold. Cowsnest can't be bought or sold. It's a charity. The land is in the Potoroo fund, which is our public fund, which all charities have to have, so they can administer their own selves without fear that the land's going to be sold from under them. And just what's happening now with Pottery Palace, how it's growing in the eyes of even the zoo community now, who definitely disapproved of us to start off with. We're even in the scientific community, we're even growing. And so it's okay now, I feel good about it.
Pottery Palace is really important. About 90% of people live in the city now. A lot of people who, Australia's a multicultural society. A lot of people here may not have, who live in Australia, may not have actually encountered a native animal. And we're asking people like that to appreciate native animals and also national parks. And yet the distance between people and the animals that we're asking to care about is growing. It's a very rare event now to actually be able to cuddle a native animal or to touch it or have it explained to you by someone who cares exactly how important it is.
Where are you, darling? Where are you? Chuffy, woofy, woofy. Chuffy, woofy, woof. Hello, Chuff. Hello, Chuff. Oh, very beautiful red eye. That is what chuffs do when they're performing. Hello, Mickey. Mickey was given to us by someone from Eden. Oh, he wasn't trying to be aggressive. I'm just lucky to have a nice yawn. Hello, my love. This is Feisty. Feisty's a shingleback. And shinglebacks often get called two-headed lizards because they have the best defence mechanism, which is to make their tail look very similar to their head.
I think it's a life-changing place in the sense that any child who visits there will take that memory to the future. So Alexandra's legacy will live beyond her.
You know, when I was a kid, to have that hands-on interaction with nature was so important. That's what gave me my passion for nature, and that's what made me become a zoologist. That is one of the prettiest Australian animals though, isn't it? I really empathise with Alexandra and Pottery Palace and running a place such as hers because it's damn hard work. There's no government funding. The bigger zoos, the government-run zoos, get government funding. They can run at a loss and they're still open. If we run at a loss, we get shut down. And where do the animals go?
Another male, I think again. You're a sweetie.
No one wants animals in cages anymore. No one wants to go to a zoo and see an animal behind wire, but there's nowhere else for these animals to live. There's no habitat for them.
A little present for you today to handle. This is Pugsley, a mountain pygmy possum.
You are totally magic, you little creature. The rarest, rarest little creature. So few of you left.
And that's why Alexandra does such a great job, because it's a necessary evil. We need to educate people, make them engage with animals and love them.
Hello Rex, where are you? Okay, here's Aspie. This is my beautiful Xandra. Where is he? Somewhere hiding. And where's my Olivia? Oh, there you are, darling. Where's your head, sweetie pie? Oh, there you are. Hello, hello. Here's Olivia. Here's my beautiful one. Hello, darling. Hello, hello, hello. Shall we go out for a little walk? Shall we? Shall we go out for a little walk? We shall. We shall. We shall. The beautiful one. Good girl. It's all right. Good girl. Okay. So what if I take your front, and then Nico can come and carry the rest of you? You're very sweet. Come on, sweetie, we just have to get you outside. Come on, sweetie, out we go. Are you right with the first part of her? There, she's off. She'll be right now. Here we go. Here we go. You can come out now, darling, if you like. Are you stuck? Come on. Come on, sweetie. That's right. No, not through the hinge. This way. Good girl. Is that all right? Go for a little walk. I'm handling other snakes, which are a little bit tricky ones, but she was never tricky. She always had the most beautiful nature. She's a good girl. You'll be all right for a short time. She could kill me very easily if she wanted to. Yeah, we don't encourage visitors to put snakes around their neck, pythons around their necks, because it's not a very good idea. Sweetie, you're definitely going to pull my hat off if you continue like that. Oh, I see, she's gone through, that's what's happened. We'll have to let her go the whole way through. She's gone through where there's a safety pin on my hat. So she is going to pull the whole thing off. So I might give you her face, okay, and then I'll let the rest of her go through. I wondered why she was pulling it so hard. So I'll take the bottom part of her. She did that. She did that to John when he was doing a talk with his trousers, and she got stuck. He had to take his trousers off in the middle of a talk. Beautiful girl.
You right? Yeah?
Yes. She's fine. Which end have I got? Oh, the tail. Yes. Yes.
Pottery Palace has attracted a lot of people who are absolutely devoted to animals of all sorts. All the staff are quite remarkable. I find it endlessly exciting just to see people who come there a little bit, well, or very, very damaged by things like murders and suicides and appalling abuse and stuff, and come there to be with the animals, and who feel a lot more complete in themselves and flourish.
Well, what's she got to eat?
That tongue is awesome. That tongue is actually 1/3 of her total body length. So yeah, it's an amazing tongue. Alexandra has allowed each and every person that works here to grow and develop at their own pace and learn at their own pace. Not too many people get to be nurtured along and encouraged in their workplace in an area that is a passion of theirs as well, and I've been fortunate to be one of those very lucky people.
2004, I found myself as the boss of WIRES, the Wildlife Information and Rescue Service in New South Wales. So I came down here for my first training course in February 2004. And there was a room in Pambula Town Hall, chock-a-block full of exactly the kind of people I hadn't seen since the 1960s when I was myself a bit of a hippie. And wandering around on the floor were wombats. Well, this was verboten in the animal rehabilitation business, having wild animals introduced to people. And herding the wombats effectively was this woman with a knitted hat and a pile of scarves and a bit of patchouli oil, and I thought, oh my God, here we are, the bloody hippies again. And then she disappeared from the course, and she was the chair of the branch and the person I was nominally there to get to know. And I said, where's Alex gone? I think it was Lenore said to me. She said, oh no, she's gone off to shoot a kangaroo, to euthanize a kangaroo. And I thought, hello. Not quite the hippie expected, someone that can actually do the hard yards, because euthanasia is the hard part of our business.
Sometimes this work, this conservation work, is really very, very horrifying, because we see animals suffering in horrible ways, nearly always caused by humans. And one particular way is when they get hit on the roads, because these animals have been following the same paths that their forefathers have followed for hundreds and thousands of years, and then suddenly we put in a road and there are huge monsters tearing along this road so fast and they get hit. have to euthanize at least 2 animals a week, but there's no way that we can nurse them better because they will die of stress if we take them into care. I don't mind shooting an animal if I'm saving it from suffering. I've always thought that the Wildlife Conservancy in America got it right, and then when the Australian Wildlife Conservancy started here, that was unbelievable. They still are doing extraordinary things, acquiring vast tracts of land and bringing them back to a condition where native animals can thrive.
After my father died in 1996 and Owen Broder had said to me, "Oh dear, another bit of the Pambula Wetlands is for sale." So far, Illawarra Motel have filled in a whole lot of it and the poor old waterbirds got shunted down. And now Robert Smith has filled in another bit and they've got shunted down even further. And now there's this bit left and it's for sale as well. Then my father died in 1996 and I thought I'll just ring up the lawyer and find out whether there's enough to buy that 15 acres. That was all it was initially. And so I did, and the lawyer, he put me onto the stockbroker, and the stockbroker decided to give me a little lecture. So he said, "Right, when we are young, we like to buy fast cars and spend lots of money. When we are older, we like to have a portfolio of shares." So I said, no, I just want to buy a swamp. Anyway, so he was horrified. But anyway, I sold all the shares that my father had. I wanted to find out how much there was. There was 58,000 I inherited from my father. So it was enough to buy the waterbird sanctuary, which was 15 acres. And that's how it began. And then someone who was on the Waterbird Sanctuary Committee said we actually need 100 acres more, and Dunmore next door got his land up for sale. So I went to talk to Ian Dunsmore to ask if we could buy 100 acres to safeguard a bit more. Then the racecourse, they put their bit in, so now it amounts to Pambula Wetlands and Heritage Project, PWHP, with the everyday name of Panboola, which is the old name for Pambula.
None of this would have happened without Alexandra. Panboola, the 82 hectares of floodplain wetland, wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Alexandra. Panboola is a really important area because it's somewhere that people can come and connect with nature. It contributes enormously to community health. It also contributes significantly to the federal and state conservation aims, which is to conserve threatened species and endangered ecological communities.
So some of the young people have done absolutely beautiful mosaics along the pathway and completely designed by them and executed by them. I just think they're lovely.
Over 160 species of birds have been recorded here now. We have a few species that are protected by international migratory bird agreements. It's an important refuge for birds. We hope that it provides inspiration for other community groups and communities as to what can be done to protect and restore the natural environment. It does want to restore itself, and if we just give it a bit of assistance, it can come back to a wonder like this.
We're in the Waterbird Sanctuary and we're at the hide, but we found that the hide was really not needed because the birds are so used to people and they know this is their sanctuary place. It's so inspiring that a horse paddock can turn into such a sanctuary in the middle of Pambula. So beautiful. not a paddock. It's not a paddock anymore. The next thing along would be where we are now, which is Batty Towers, which used to be called Foxholm. And what happened here is that we used to do flying fox counts on the same 2 nights every season, and we'd come here and just count them on the fly out to count how many. And then I saw for sale notices going up all over the place. And I thought, oh no. My mother had only just died, and I behaved exactly the way I did when my father died. It sounds quite indecent, really. I rang up the person handling the will and asked whether I could have some money forwarded so I could buy 2 blocks here. And my idea was that if it was going to have houses along this road, then there could be people who would be the custodians who would live in those houses and guard that incredible deep gully down there where the flying foxes were camped. And so I did buy 2 blocks, one of 12 acres and one of 10 acres, and quickly put voluntary conservation agreements on them so that they couldn't be harmed.
Batty Towers is one of the main roost sites down here on the far south coast. Grey-headed flying foxes are listed as vulnerable in national and New South Wales threatened species legislation, and one of the key threatening processes for under that legislation that's been identified, one is the loss of roosting habitats and one is the loss of feeding habitats. So Batty Towers, this site here this year had over 100,000 bats, and it's a really important place for the long-term survival of this species. So many places disappearing for these bats as a habitat, and without these core areas they won't survive. So that's why they're listed as vulnerable, and this is why this roost site is so integral to their long-term survival in New South Wales.
Their numbers have crashed because of us taking all their habitat and people being allowed to shoot them. In the last 3 years we've been able to take them to Potoroo Palace and establish them there, and so the ones who can't be released are part of the sanctuary now, part of the zoo, and people can talk to them, and they love to be talked to, and they're quite responsive.
And they're drama queens, so they're saying, I've never seen a human being in my life and how terrifying this is, but it'll take us about 2 seconds of being with them and they'll want to talk to us. This is Powerful, and Powerful's a little bit sideways because he had a stroke. He just dropped from the roof one day to the ground and he couldn't move. And I had him for a month in my bedroom and he talked to me all the time. And this is Tarry. And Tarry was so badly dehydrated that I thought he had brain damage for a year. It's all right, darling. And this is Cooper. Cooper was caught in barbed wire and he tried to chew his wing off the barbed wire and he damaged his mouth. Sparky's called Sparky because he was electrocuted. And this is little Floss. And Flossie lost a lot of her wing from the loose netting that people put over fruit trees. Oh, so beautiful. You've still got a bit of banana in your mouth, haven't you? I think my fingers taste of banana. All they want is to be cuddled, and the little orphans, and the only problem is you have to discover how you can cuddle something that's got a lot of spikes. Could you take my hand, please? Oh, Floss. I didn't mean in your mouth, I meant with your thumb. All right, you hold my hand, you hold my hand. That's nice, I like holding your hand. Good boy. Flying foxes are the closest relative to us in the Australian fauna. They're unbelievably intelligent, the most intelligent native animal. In the last 10-15 years, their numbers have gone down to a third of what they were. And we need them so much because the eucalypts put out their best pollen at night for the flying foxes. The flying foxes are the pollinators of the eucalypts, more than the honey eaters, more than the bees. And they've adapted really well to humans, but humans are not adapting very well to them at all.
The way that Potoroo Palace survives, and thus Cowsnest survives, because we're both together now, is by having tax deductibility for donations. It could be a really wonderful association as long as this tax deductible status thing continues. Otherwise, I don't think we have a hope.
We wouldn't be able to survive, because Alexandra's donations make it possible for her to give quite a lot of money to Potoroo and Cowsnest now, and that's the only reason that they survive. Only 1% of all the money given by Australians in philanthropy goes to conservation movements. 36% goes to churches. Medical research is 20%, but only 1% of the money given by Australian people goes towards looking after the most basic thing that we've got, the earth, which is pretty sad.
We're only one of millions of other species of living things, but we're the guardian species. We're the ones to look after the other species. Rivers and mountains and forests and deserts and woodlands and oceans, they don't scream when we hurt them. But does that make it all right to hurt them? I think to myself sometimes, it's very strange that we think in terms of owning a little bit of earth or owning a little bit of air or water. It doesn't make sense. Much more, we're the guardians, we're the ones to look after it.
What comes out of all that, and what has happened once or twice at Cowsnest with the capitalist sort of people, is that, okay, you trust and people come in and thousands of people do wonderful things, and then occasionally, I could count on one hand probably the number of people who let you down and who take advantage of your trust, but it's worth it every time to trust because such amazing things come out of that. And the whole thing is blossoming again. So we've been going out every community day and supporting the people who are who've been there throughout all that and who are still wanting it to blossom again.
Oh dear, I sound like a chook.
And hopefully now it'll attract more people and we'll get back to what it was in the 80s. And that's our dream.
Well, this is the future, not government or anything like that. This is the future of humanity. What Alexandra has taught us, we're teaching our children, you know, being self-sufficient, caring, loving, gentle, all that kind of stuff. I've always wanted to change the world but never knew how. And you just got to start off in a little community. Yeah, it's the only way.
I really liked this place here because this was one of our first vegetable gardens. Not the very first, but it was one of the first. We had 4 acres or more of gardens. What has remained is all the little hellebores coming up everywhere, and little violets, a complete carpet of little violets. It just has become a different sort of place, but a really magic place. And then when you find a wallaby in the garden, it's even better.
Cowsnest is a lifestyle that's rapidly disappearing. It's a real privilege to be able to live like this now. We try to keep the idea alive as much as we can. Alexandra has pretty much been the tool for a lot of people to be able to live like this.
So when I've noticed being at Potoroo Palace and here with a lot of people that might have issues, being around Alexandra, they change and people's personalities just, they become themselves and they don't feel threatened and they're safe.
Oh, magical.
Look out, here we come.
Well done. Oh, it looks really good there. Let's leave it there.
It can rest for a while. Where's the break?
And this is what you've done for, I reckon, thousands of people that you've crossed paths with. Just a loving touch or just the caring words. You've changed so many people's lives.
We're celebrating Cowsnest's 40th birthday, and it's very exciting because it's like something out of the past, but it's present and it's people that I've known for over 40 years, some of them. And we're doing different workshops. We've got paper making, which Zoe's doing, and we've got dream catchers, which Zoe's doing. I've set up a giant weaving out there for everybody to work on, and I've set up dot painting over there, dot painting on rocks. And this afternoon we have at 4 o'clock a Bollywood dancing workshop. Community and conservation and education again.
And you just have to keep her warm and fed and clean, and then she's perfectly happy.
Certainly in our Western world, we are still very much sort of focused on the family unit and, you know, ownership of a house and those sorts of things. But I think the lessons that you learn, the skills you gain in living in that way are the sorts of things that you will stay with you for all of your life.
It's good to have that sort of opportunity for people who want to put themselves in there and try it, you know. And some people stay with it, and that's marvellous because then they can be there when the next lot come through. So it's very important. I think she is totally brave, and her courage is fed by her amazing faith and belief in humanity and the planet.
She shows that one person can make a difference, and it gives, I think, everyone hope that they can contribute to changing their world. It really is important in this day and age for people not to always look to outside agencies to do things and blame or seek those things to happen. It really is important to foster a sense of personal responsibility for your world and for your environment. And when I can reach out to groupings or to individuals like Alexandra and drawing off the energy of people like Alexandra, it really inspires you to be worthy of people like that too, you know, when they look to you to translate what they do on the ground at the grassroots into political action, into policy.
We have this wonderful example of Maria's trustees who took her instructions of keeping the family together, and they set up foundations to finance things, and they have advised us that that's what we should do. So I would like to set up with Nico a foundation which could finance Potoroo after my death. So now it is organised that every 3 years the trustees bring together all the members of the family. And we went to St. Petersburg. We walked straight back into the fairy tale. It was unbelievable. I went into the castle and there were trees growing in it. And I actually felt quite happy because I thought nature's taking over. But you could still walk in there and just feel exactly where the entrance hall was, where the huge black stuffed bears had been. And you could see where the tower had been, even though the top of it was completely gone. And it was still an extraordinary place to be. I think the time when it was really overwhelming, my great-grandmother being there, was at the Vaduz one in Liechtenstein, because there was a portrait that was normal height, as she would have been, there on the wall, in amongst all our pictures of all of us. And it just felt as though she was there. Marie's attitude was, because she was given so much, it behoved her to share it. And that is how I feel. A lot of my life I haven't had anything, and I know how to live on nothing, and we have lived very cheaply, just out of what we produced out of the gardens. But then I became very lucky after my mother died in 2000, and having been given all that, I feel it behoves me to use it in the best possible way. And that, for me, has been community conservation and education.
The skies of the day, the wavy lines of barbed wire, mud and blackberries, the patterns of orange purple earths, and now the deep
The traditional custodians, past and present, of these lands and waters, the Yuin Nation, have cared for this land for so many thousands of years. And we can learn from them so much about caring for land and plants and animals. And we can also learn from them the incredible strength and resilience of family and community which have enabled them to survive. Thank you.